Perfect. Hi, Tiffany. We have most people who commented.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
How are ya?
Good.
Hi, cutie. How are ya? Are you happy not to go to school right now? No.
Like school?
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, I was just saying that I'm recording this class, so if at any time, what I'll do is I'm going to email it and post it in the group. So basically, to actually view the class later, you'll just log on to Zoom, and it will be there. All you need is like the free account. You don't need anything special to log in to see it. So if you want to go back and review anything, it will be there indefinitely. I'm not going to take it down or anything. And do all of you guys have your camera ready or know at least what you're working with for the most part?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the reason why I said that the class was a DSLR is because basically the reason specifically to these cameras that where the class is on is if you take your lens off, you'll see inside your camera is a mirror. And that mirror is what flips when you're taking a photo, and that's what makes it essentially a DSLR, is that it's using the mirror to reflect and take the photo versus a point and shoot, which does not have a mirror inside it. So one thing I like to start out every time I do this class is I think sometimes our people are a little bit confused on how certain parts of the camera work. So I like to kind of go over that part first and then kind of get into detail. For one thing is your lenses are a huge part of your, also it doesn't matter if you're using Canon or Nikon or whatever, it's all pretty similar. There's no difference. I use Canon, but it doesn't matter. So a lot of people who are trying to achieve this, I like to start this out right away, is sometimes your lens might be stopping you from exactly what you're trying to achieve, and we'll talk about that later. But just so you know, your lens, if you're, while we're taking this class, if like your whatever lens you have on it won't let you get to a certain aperture, it's your lens, and we'll talk about that. So don't be like, my camera's not doing what you're saying. It could be the lens that you're using. It doesn't allow you to go to the numbers I'm talking about. So what I really want to do for this class is your dial up here. Most of you, I'm assuming, shoot in auto. It's usually how I started. It's usually how people start. I like to get it so you're completely in full manual. So by the time that we're done with this class, you should be able to use your camera in complete manual to know what you want to take a picture, like what you want it to look like. Auto, you could take 100 pictures and maybe have, you know, maybe 10% of them look awesome because they did what you thought it did, but then the other percent is like, oh, why is this not this way or that way? It's because auto is just assuming they know what you want your camera to do. The other modes like the AV and the other modes, they're like kind of auto. So like one of them will control your shutter speed, but you still have to control other parts. So full manual is what I want you to be able to do by the time you're done with this. So you know what you're trying to get. The thing also about auto is I feel like it takes away the art side of it because it's doing what they think, what your camera thinks you want, versus in manual, you're saying, no, this is what I want my picture to look like. This is what I want, what I want to be blurry, what I want to be in focus, how bright I want it to be, how dark I want it to be. That's what this part of your camera does. So in the manual mode, I want you guys to turn your cameras on, and I want you to put it on manual. And the first three things I want to talk about are the first three numbers on top. You'll see like there's one number that's 1 and then like a slash and then a number. That's called your shutter speed. And what that does is that tells you how quick the inside of your camera, when you take a picture, how much that shutter, how fast it closes. The lower the number, the slower it closes. So like right now mine's set at 1/800, which that's just because I was outside and it was really sunny. So that means my camera, my shutter speed is going and closing really quick. Where like if it was like 200, it would kind of open and then close, open and then close. So these three things are most important in a picture because the faster that it closes, if you picture like your lens, when it's open, it's letting light in. When it's closed, it's not. So when you set that number higher, it's letting less light in because it's closing really fast. Where when it's opening slower, it's kind of letting light in and then closing, letting light in and closing. So there's two parts to that number. The first part being that it's letting the light come in and out, but also it's telling you, it's also controls the blur of your pictures. So if you take a lot of pictures and your pictures are blurry, chances are it's because that number is too low. Your subject is moving. So if you think of your shutter opening, and if something's moving before it closes again, it's going to be blurry. Where if that's a higher number, it's going to close faster and be less blurry because it's capturing the picture, capturing what you want before movement. So if you notice, that's probably the one thing people tell me, like especially sports pictures. My pictures are so blurry, Melissa. Why are they so blurry? But then I'll look at their camera and they have it on auto and it's like 1/40, which is, I mean, literally, it's going to be so blurry. It's just letting everything move around before it closes that. Typically for like somebody who's sitting, say like a sleeping baby, I usually keep mine around like 250. But like, say if I'm doing sports, I won't go below 400 because I want it to capture the picture sharp without the subject moving. The downside of that is, so people might think, well, I'll just set that number really high because then I know I'll get a sharp picture. But the problem is when you set it really high, it's also going to make your picture really dark if you don't have enough light because it's closing so fast that it's not letting you light in. So that's when the next number comes into play. And this is where your lens will kind of play a part. So that number in the middle, it's called your f-stop or your aperture. So you know how when you look at a picture and you see like how some things are, maybe one thing is in focus and the rest is really blurry? So the lower that number is, so like my lens specifically goes down to 1.4, but like some of you guys, I think I saw like some zoom lens, some of them only go down to like 4.5 or whatever. Like your lens actually will, this kind of depends on the lens that you're using to know how low that number can go. But so like when I'm taking a picture of, say, again, like say a baby sleeping or a portrait, I keep that number around 2.8 because I want the person to be in focus, but the rest of it to be blurry. But like some lenses will only let you go, like say a zoom lens will only let you go down usually to about 4.0, as low as it will go. So if that's the case, sometimes when you're trying to achieve that really, they call it bokeh, where like you're in focus and everything else is blurry, that lens itself won't allow you to achieve that. It's not that you don't know what you're doing, it's that your lens will not allow you to go that low to make it that focused, that sharp. So if you find that you're like, Melissa, once you learn all this and I know it and I still can't, we can always talk about a lens that might be better for what you're looking for. But that's why you'll see photographers have so many lenses, because different lenses allow you to get a different look and do different things. So for this number, the lower that number is, also is the more light you get in. So when I do have to set my shutter speed high, let's say for sports, and I have to put it at 400, 600, I set that middle number to as low as I can go, which, like I said, my lens is 1.4. But the thing about as low as it can go, say at 1.4, that is literally like this much in focus. So when you are setting that number that low, you have to make sure you're really on your point. Like if you really want to, let's say you're taking pictures of eyes, you really want your sensor to be on their eyes, because it's such a small, it's kind of like this part is going to be in focus, but like as it gets further away, it's going to get blurrier. So like say like this is 1.4 and blurry, this is 4.0 and blurry, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, this controls how much you have in focus. So for the most part, unless I'm shooting large groups, I keep that out usually around 2.8 or 3. A good rule of thumb over 3 people is that number should be as many more people as you have over 3. So if you have 4 people, you want it to be set at 4. If you have 5, 5. That's because you want them all to be in focus. You don't want it to like focus in the center of the picture and have that person be in focus, but everyone else get blurry as they go further away from that number, you know? So that's what that, and I'll come back to all these. I'm just kind of going over the basics. So that's what that number does. That's kind of your blur. So the last number all the way on the right is called your ISO. Again, this is going to vary on your camera. My ISO goes up to 16,000. A lot of this professional camera, a lot of cameras only go up to like 6,400 or whatever. So that would vary for your specific camera. But so that number also controls light. So basically, the bigger that number is, the more light it's letting in. which, okay, so that's awesome, right? Because you want light in your picture. The other side of it to keep in mind is the more that that number goes up, the grainier, like the lower of the quality of your picture. So the whole point of photography is to basically balance these three numbers so that you have a picture that's sharp, you have a picture that's as bright as you want it to be, or dark. There's a lot of photographers who they call are moody, and they're more on the darker. I'm kind of more that way. I'm kind of more of a darker. If you notice, my images are very contrasty. I kind of underexpose, and then I'll go into Photoshop and I'll edit lighter parts that I want, but I find it that I like kind of more than like the bright and airy picture. I like kind of more of the little bit of the darker stuff. But so that's like your balance. So what I want you guys to do, and you could take a picture of anything that's in front of you. I want you to just kind of play with those settings a little bit. So like set your camera to the shutter speed, and you have to figure out how to do that in your camera, but it's just do 1/200. That's what I want your shutter speed to be, 200. And then I want you to put your f-stop, so the number in the middle, as low as your lens will allow you to go.
Do you know how I'm sure you know, but how do we change that number? Like,
So
I don't know how to get over to it.
So for me, I have to hold down, let me see. I have like a little Q on the back of mine. Let me see if I can turn it around. What are you shooting with? Canon? Is that Canon?
Yeah, it's a T3i.
So if I have like a Q here on the back, do you have like a little button that's a Q? Looks like that.
Oh, okay.
And for me, I just like toggle, I use this little thing right here and I toggle over to it. And then I can adjust it with this dial. Does yours have that?
I'm trying to see. Preston, turn on my light over there.
Yeah. So if there's another way on this, right? There might be another way to do it.
Yeah. I don't have a cue. This is what I have.
Let's see. Okay, so that is your shutter speed that you're on right now.
Okay.
Oh, oh no, okay, it is on manual. So that number right there is right. And then to get to the next one, I think you press those little arrows to your left and right, and it should go over to the next one. So then 1/200.
It says AF mode, one shot AF.
And on top, are you in manual?
Yes.
Trying to think. Is anybody else having troubles finding those numbers or switching them? Can you switch them all over, okay? Okay, let me see. Do you have an M dash?
You know what I did? I pressed the AV button and I held it down. If I hold it down and turn the thing, then I can do it.
Okay, so
okay.
Yeah, everyone's are all like, every model is a little bit different.
Right.
So set that to whatever your lowest that you can. And then for your ISO, I want you just to start at whatever your lowest is. And then I want you to take a picture. And then I want you to like change your ISO really high and see how you'll see it'll be brighter, should get brighter. I want you to like kind of mess with how you can see how those three things kind of adjust your images. And like I said, the number, like I said, mine goes to 2.8, but for sure, Jessica and Emily, yours will be probably lower than 2.8, I'm assuming. What does yours go down to, Jessica?
You're talking the number next
number, like with the F in front of it, your screen, it's just really bright. I know it's dark, I can't see it.
Yeah. I can only go down to
like 4 or 5.
3.5.
Yeah, okay. So that just is specific to your specific lens. So if you notice when you're taking pictures, if you adjust those settings, you can see like there's more light in and more light out. Can you kind of see that when you take a picture? Literally when I started to figure out what I wanted, I would take a pop can. You want to start with something to practice on that doesn't move. So obviously you're not facing a kid when you're first starting. But I literally would take a pop can and take a picture of it and adjust the settings until I liked it. Did I like, however I like the lighting, to learn how the three of them kind of go together. So you're basically always trying to balance. So sometimes, I mean, even now, I'll take a picture and can you see like if you look in your camera, you should have like a little like a little graph that goes from one side, like a meter. You see that in your cameras? Yes. So that is telling you your exposure. So usually you want to try and keep it in the middle. and that's really just to start. Because like I said, when you start to take pictures more and more, you might like a picture that's more brighter. So it won't be in the middle. It will be more on one side. It'll be more on the left. Or maybe you like pictures that are more darker. It will be more on the right. So I don't really teach by meter. I like you to learn your settings so that way you can decide what you like. Because if everyone took a picture with the meter exactly the same, we'd all have the same kind of art. And that's just not how photography is. So like I like some pictures, I'll take some pictures purposely in shadows and things. So you have like, you know, your face kind of light where the light is and darker where the, you know, where the light is, where the light's not. And if we always perfectly expose every single picture per a meter, there would be no art part of it. It would just be, you know, this is just the picture that everyone would take because they'd set their settings exactly the same, and that would just be the picture that we'd all take. So we're going to kind of talk about those settings. We'll come back to them. I just kind of want to talk about the basics of your camera. White balance, to be honest with you, unless I'm in a hospital shooting newborns where there's a lot of like grays and whites that I want to balance, I usually do auto. It's pretty good. I don't really have any problem with that for the most part. Every now and then when you're working, like if you're taking pictures in a gym, the fluorescent lights inside a high school gym are like the absolute worst.
Yes.
So that's always like a big headache for me. And when I shoot at school in the gyms, I literally never, my ISO is never under 3200. Like, I don't know why. For the most part, it's a high number. And I said, like, the higher the number is, the grainier your picture is. But like, for the most part, we're not blowing up high school sports pictures really big where you're going to really notice like pixelated images. So high school gyms to me are like my biggest challenge. And I mean, I do correct them in Photoshop, but for like a high school gym, if you go to your white balance, if you can figure that one out on there. Like mine is like a little mine says AWB if I press the Q button. If anyone's having trouble, let me know. Okay, so if you click on that, and it, like I said, I keep mine on auto, but if you see like they have like mine has like a daylight, a shade. If you go to white, fluorescent, or tungsten, when you get into a gym, you can kind of go back and forth to those. That's really the only time that I take it off auto, because for whatever reason, my pictures come out very orange if I keep it on auto. But in those two modes, they do really well. But otherwise, I keep in auto, to be honest. There's never, I feel like if you get your exposure right, the white balance for what you're going to be using it for and what I typically use it for is a lot of outside stuff and things like that. I don't really ever have a problem with that. The other thing before we go any further is your sensor. So like mine is like this, and I actually keep mine in the middle for the most part, unless I'm shooting a newborn. So like for me, mine is like this little meter up top here, this top right one. You guys know how to find your meter, or I'm sorry, your sensor. If you can't find it, let me know. So that is where you want to, obviously what you want to focus. So like sometimes if I'm photographing something that like, I want to have the subject on one side and show the scenery a lot, like I'll move this over. It's not staying on very long. I'll move it to like the side. So now at this point, all of this is in focus, but this part's going to be less blurry. So like you can move that around to what you want in focus, but the rest of it will still be in the picture. It'll just be softer than the rest of your image. Does that make sense? So when you're taking pictures, definitely like move around with that. That's why I kind of figured we'd do smaller classes where you guys could go and like practice this stuff and be able to come back and say, okay, Melissa, no matter what I do, I just can't figure out my ISO, or I can't figure out what shutter speed I should be using. We can kind of like use that as what we need to keep working on together. What are most of you interested in shooting? Just home stuff, kid stuff? Like what's kind of your main thing that you would like to be shooting?
I do sports.
Sports, yeah.
Football and basketball.
Okay.
Like you were explaining, in the gyms is the worst.
The worst. It is. That's probably something that I have worked the hardest on, is sports pictures inside.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, your biggest thing is going to be your shutter speed, because I feel like that's a lot of times. I had like a meeting with a class with a bunch of the wrestling moms. Like, I take all these pictures, but half of them are blurry. But it's a lot of it's your shutter speed. Like, so I always say for sports, just don't even think about going below 400. So like, just walk in there at 400.
Okay.
And because that's going to capture people in motion. And because you're at 400, especially inside, your ISO is going to be really high, because you're shutting down the light in a dark place with not a lot of natural light, with only using the gym lights. So my numbers are really high. And again, you're going to want to really keep that number in the middle, that f-stop, as low as you can. So kind of think about it as a triangle. So like when you adjust this number, you have to adjust these two numbers. So they're kind of always, the one that I adjust the least is the f-stop. For me, I like having a really sharp middle of my picture and letting it naturally kind of soften out. I like that. That's what I like. So like I said, unless I'm doing a large group, I'll keep it at 2.8. If your lenses only allow you to go to 3.5, 4, honestly, you're probably never going to shoot anything that you would need a bigger aperture for. So I would never really mess with that number for you guys, honestly. If you have a lens, like, you know, like does go lower, say you want to photograph your baby's toes and you want just a little toes in focus, and you have a lens that will let you go down to 2.8, go ahead. That's really going to make their toe. That's what I do for babies. Like, when I want to get really sharp little baby toes, I'll put my camera down to 1.4. So it's so sharp just in the middle, and I'll put my sensor like right on their toes, and then the rest of it kind of blurs out. So what's really in focus is their little toes. But unless you're photographing tiny things, or some people like to use it for flowers. If you're like a nature photographer, people will set that number really low, because you'll notice, like, if you see like landscape or floral pictures, that the middle of the flower is super, super sharp, and then like the leaves and the petals are a little bit softer. That's because they've set that number really low to be focused on just that. So if you're a person who really likes, like, I just want to achieve pictures where everything is super, super sharp in the middle, but the rest is really blurry, that's either a lens change or moving your subject a lot farther than what you're taking a picture of. So say, like, if I was taking a picture right here and there was somebody right next to me, we would be the same sharpness because we're right next to each other. But if that person was standing behind me, or a wall, a brick wall, flowers, whatever it is that's your background, obviously I'm going to be sharper and they're going to be, and that's just whatever lens you're using. I'm going to be more in focus than whatever's behind me or to the side of me. But generally speaking, and that's one thing people ask me so much about, is that sharpness where everything else is blurry. A lot of that's just a lens thing. What else? What else is anybody photographing? Like, what else? What other questions before we go any further that, like, I can make sure that we address as far as like pictures? Like, is it that your pictures aren't in focus? Is it like, what kind of do you think that you could use better? Anybody?
I'm just little kids that don't sit still.
Yeah, so same like sports. I think really understanding your sorry, somebody's in my driveway. Understanding your shutter speed is so important. So like for me, especially if I'm outside, so say you're outside, you're doing outside sports, because again, that controls so much of your lighting. You're going to want that number. That number could be pretty high because you don't want to let light in. You know, so when I'm outside, a lot of times I'll start with my ISO and I'll just set it at 100 because I know it's a bright sunny day and I don't need to add more light. And then I'll have my aperture is set at a set number. So that doesn't matter. Like, I like 2.8. That's pretty much my baby. It's where I keep my camera. And then you can keep adjusting your shutter speed to the higher and faster you're going to be. So for outside sports, sometimes, say on like a summer day, I'll keep my ISO at 0 or at 100 because I don't need more light. I keep my aperture in the middle the same. I can sometimes have my shutter speed up to like 4,000 because it's too bright otherwise. You have so much sun you're letting in. So not only are you trying to capture a picture that's an image that's sharp, but you're also trying to say, like, I don't want all that light in my picture. So sometimes you have to keep upping that shutter speed so it's closing really fast so that you can't let more light in. Does that make sense? So kind of like, it depends on what I'm shooting. If I'm shooting outside, my shutter speed is most important. I don't want to let too much light in. I don't want to overexpose my pictures. One thing about pictures is you can almost always save a picture that's too dark by lightening up in Photoshop or even like a app on your phone or whatever. But pictures that are too bright, that are it's called overexposed, you can't really fix them as easy because you can't really add details back into people's faces. You can't really add the things that get washed out with too much light. But the other way around, you can lighten those areas up for the most part. I mean, obviously a pitch black picture takes a lot of work, but something that's a little bit too dark, you can usually fix. So when I'm outside, I worry about my shutter speed and not letting too much in if it's a bright day. Inside, there's usually not enough light. So I'm trying to keep my settings on the left side as low as possible and still get sharp images. And on the right side, meaning your ISO, as low as possible. Does that make sense? The triangle makes sense? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So those are the most important things when taking a picture. Like, if there's anything I can tell you about your pictures is once you understand how those three work together, and that's a lot of it is just truly trial and error, unless you want to look inside. Like I said, when you take a picture and you see that meter, you'll see as you change your settings, it's going one way or another. It's changing. And that middle where it's up like this, it's like the middle point, that's supposed to be like even exposure. It's like a perfect exposure. But if you go this way, well, it's kind of the opposite for you guys, but if you start going to the right, that's meaning that it's getting too dark. And so light to the left is lighter. Kind of think left, light. It's kind of how you can like think of your meter. So if you want to start using your meter and really watching it through your camera, that's now how that work didn't work for me. I'm more of a hands-on person. I want to look at my camera and say like, oh yeah, okay, so I made my ISO to, instead of 400, it went to 600, and my picture got so much brighter than it was before. So to me, I like to see the changes. I don't even think about it anymore. And a lot of people are like, oh, Melissa, I'm never going to be able to remember these numbers. But think about the first time you went from a BlackBerry to an iPhone, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I've never had a phone like this, right? But now you don't even think about it. You just do it. And that's really how the settings on your camera will go. Like, you won't even realize it. You'll just go to take a picture. It'll be too dark and you'll go, oh, and you'll just like change your ISO and you won't even think about it. But to do that, you have to regularly use it, and you have to keep practicing, and then literally it becomes literally like nothing. It's like anything else that you do. You won't even think about it anymore. When you go to each one of your lens, if you look on your lens, you'll be able to see on here, it's really tiny, but there's like numbers on the front. It will tell you the specifics of your lens. So like mine says 24 millimeter, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then it says 1.4. That number is 1.4. That's as low as my aperture will get. So if you have a zoom lens, a lot of times it'll say like a number and then a dash and a number. That's like your range of your lens, which we'll talk about in a second. But so really just understanding those really just basics. Number one, that your lens controls the light. There's two different kinds of lenses that you can use. The one that is on a lot of your cameras, that's a zoom lens. What I use, it's called a prime. And if you look at my lens, I can't adjust this. There's no zoom in it. And I prefer prime, especially for portraits. I don't necessarily use this one for sports because I like to zoom in really close. But for like portraits or just taking pictures of your family up close, whatever, a prime lens means that you can't turn it. There's no zooming. But so picture a lens. You have all these like glass, they call it, inside, prisms. And in a prime, when you can't change it, there's one hole that's like all the light's going through. But when you have a zoom lens, it's closing and opening, and so it's letting less light, more light, less light, more light as you're zooming in and out. You'll notice when you're using your zoom, when it's completely closed, when it's completely wide open, it's the say 3.5, 5.4.0, whatever. But as you turn it, you'll notice that F number changes because that's moving those lenses inside and changing your aperture. You can't change that. That's just what your lens will do. There's nothing you can do to control that kind of lens. For me, I control it because I'm the zoom. I walk forward, I walk back, I lean in, I move out. I'm the zoom, but I like it because it's sharper and it lets more light in because there's not a bunch of different lenses that are blocking light as you move it, you know? So a prime lens means that there's no zoom, it's just one, it's a prime lens. It's think prime, think one, and it's just one lens. Again, if you're using this for, say you want to take pictures of Willow and you want to get like a close-up of her, lenses that you're not zooming are going to have more light, especially for inside. One that I recommend, and it's super cheap, it's like literally the cheapest lens, and when I first started, it's all I shot with. It's a 50. It's a 50 millimeter. You can get them for Nikon or Canon, and I'm pretty sure Sony. It's a prime lens. It's like this big, and it's just like the greatest little, they call it the nifty 50 in like the photography world. And it's like, I mean, this lens was like $900, and I would say for that $100, it's just a great second lens. Like I still sometimes use it. But it's a prime lens, so there's no zooming in and out, and it lets a lot of light in. So these numbers up top that say, like this one says 24 millimeter, you'll notice like sometimes they'll say 18, they'll say 50, like the nifty 50 I was just talking about. The smaller the number, the wider the picture. So like mine is 24 for me. I can use it for, I use this lens probably, unless I'm working a wedding, 90% of the time, because it gives me a really wide range to shoot with. That way if I want to crop in later, I can, or not, whatever. So the bigger that number, like if you'll see, like I have a lens that's a 70 to 200. So that means it's a zoom lens. It's what I use a lot for weddings. It's that big like white one that you'll see like photographers. Oh, it's right here, actually. Like one that looks like that. I use this for weddings. So from 70 to 200 means that it can be, you know, pretty decent wide range, but when it's at 200, I can zoom in really close. So it's kind of the opposite. When you think like a big number, you think like, oh, 200 means you can see big. 200 is as far as it can zoom in. So it's kind of like the opposite. Like the bigger the number, the more it can zoom, like the more is zoomed in that you're taking your photo of. The smaller the number, the bigger it is, and the more that you're getting into your picture. So for me, I like 24. It's a nice number for me. The 50 is obviously half of that. The great thing about it is if you're outside, it's still a great lens. Inside, is say if you're using a 50, like say when I'm taking pictures of birth sessions, I can only get so, you need a pretty big space because you can't just back up and get like a whole room in picture with it. So it's good for portraits when you're doing close up, things like that. So just kind of understanding what your lens can do, depending on like what you want to do for photography. I mean, some people literally just want it because they want to shoot kids. Some people are, you know, looking to be photographers or are photographers starting out. There's also like rental places. And I started out doing that too, where you can rent a couple different lenses pretty inexpensively to kind of just test them and decide what you like and what you don't like. Most of your kit lenses for what you guys are using them for are gonna work. You don't really need anything extra beyond that. I'm in no way endorsing your spouses will kill me. It's like, oh, Melissa said I need some new lenses. Like you don't have, it's not a necessity by any means, but it definitely, depending on what you're using it for, if you get to the point that you learn all of these parts of your camera and you're like, I still don't get the look I want, that's probably why. Okay, so went over lenses, went over some sensory things. The other thing to talk about is if you're going to be editing pictures, like more formal, like Photoshop and things like that. You'll kind of hear, if you're in photography groups, you'll hear a word called RAW. And basically it's either RAW or JPEG. And I'm literally like the faux pas in the photography world because I don't normally shoot in RAW unless I'm shooting birth or weddings. And really almost all professional photographers shoot in RAW. And the reason why I don't is because, so like a RAW image is kind of takes your picture in different layers. So when you go to edit it later, it's a lot easier to change the look of your picture. Like if you really underexpose, you have a lot more opportunities to change it and edit it. When JPEG kind of takes your picture. So like RAW kind of gives you all these layers and the picture's like this big when you open it up. Where JPEG kind of already squishes it together. So when you go to edit, a lot of the layers are not as easy to go in and change, say like darkness, brightness, color, sharpness. RAW gives you more flexibility to edit. I like to think if you know how to use your camera, you shouldn't need to do that much editing to it. So for me, I try to really get it right in camera and not have to worry about that so much. But with weddings and birth photography, the lighting changes so fast and so much that I like to have that flexibility for those kind of sessions. For the most part, when I'm outside shooting, families playing outside, I don't know, I prefer JPEG. To me, it's easier to edit. A file is so much larger when it's raw. And if you don't know what you're doing in Photoshop, it's literally just like super overwhelming. So if anyone ever gets to the point where they're like, Melissa, I'd really like to learn how to edit raw photos, I'm super happy to do that with you guys, but you will see it like in your camera. When you go into like the quality, if you go to like your image quality, mine's like in my menu, and you go into image quality, like I have like the option to change, I don't know if you can even see that, like raw or not. I don't shoot in raw, and I get people in photography groups that tell me I'm wrong, but I mean, so far I've taken a lot of pictures, so it's working for me. But
Okay, so all the other ones are JPEG ones then?
so like if you notice when you change it, like it's the quality of the picture. So like I don't know why, to be honest with you, anybody would ever change that to a lower quality picture, because that's what we pay for with our cameras. But if you change that, and you'll notice like the number of pictures you take goes down as you go down. That's basically because you're taking less quality of photos. So it's using less of your memory card space because the picture itself is less quality. I would obviously never lower the quality of my picture. So I honestly don't know why anybody would want to, but I guess if your memory card was full and you were in a jam and you need to take a couple more pictures,
Gotcha.
you could lower it. But yeah, so the two options is like raw, and then the lower one is JPEG. At least on mine goes raw and then JPEG. But like I said, to be honest, unless you knew Photoshop and you knew how to even edit it, there would be no point.
Yeah, I don't.
You know, but even for me, like I said, when you shoot in raw, it's this huge file, so you have these huge cards, and when you go to open it up, it's like you can't just like edit and move on and edit and move on. It's like this process. And like I said, unless it's a wedding or a birth where like the lighting of a church, or you know, in birth you're shooting right under the light of a baby coming out is super bright, but then if you move your camera a little bit to the left, you're not under that bright light, it's super dark. So in that aspect, I use it just because I have more control over it. But in case you hear that word, that's what it means. It basically is a deeper way to edit your photo later on. So unless you are really into learning how to edit your pictures, raw is kind of unnecessary, I guess.
What do you have yours at?
What's that?
What should we have ours at?
I have like mine, and same as you probably should. And if you go into your image quality, whatever your highest one is in your JPEG, like for me, mine's 25 megapixels, but everyone's will change. Mine's probably higher than most of yours. So it's like the standard, the whatever your highest quality is on your camera should be the first option you have. Like I said, if you change it, you'll notice like, you know, right now I can take 800 pictures, but if I move it to the one less, it's like 600. And then, you know, it just keeps getting less and more and more pictures because it's lowering the quality. Do you see that?
Mine actually just show, unless I'm just like really looking at the wrong thing, my first option in the menu was quality, but it's showing this.
Okay, so
is that the right stuff? Am I in the right stuff?
Exactly what it is. Yep. And so what yours is set on right now is what I'm on. That's what I keep.
Oh, okay.
So basically, yours starts like most of them. Like it starts at the highest, and then it just goes lower. So just lower quality. And like I said, if you just kind of toggle through those, you'll see like you have a memory card in there. It's allowing you to take more pictures on the memory card.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't know why people would want to lower their quality of their picture. That seems silly to me, but that's what that means. So I don't ever mess with that, to be honest. Like I said, unless I'm shooting a wedding or birth, and I'll mess with that. But for the most part, you're going to want to take a picture of the highest quality, and you're going to not be editing them to that extreme. Even if you did want to edit them, like I still can edit my pictures in JPEG. It's just not as thorough as you can in RAW. But if you get to know the settings of your camera, it's not really. The only time, like we were talking about the school gym, the only time I really have to really edit heavier than most things is the lighting of gyms. I mean, they're just literally like the orangest, weirdest lighting ever. In that case, you know, I'll shoot it in the settings that I just told you. And if it's still too orange, then I'll go into Photoshop and kind of take out the orange. But for the most part, yeah, you won't really have to worry about that. A couple other things I wanted to talk about was actually the lighting of your pictures. Have you ever noticed, or the coloring, have you ever noticed when you take a picture, how, especially when you're taking a picture on grass, how like your pictures sometimes have like a green tone to it? So the thing to think about when you take pictures is pictures are all about lighting and reflection. I have sometimes worn like a red shirt or a dark shirt, and when I take the picture, if there's light reflecting off me, it will reflect on my images, which is why the lighting isn't always, like if you're scrolling through your camera after you're taking pictures, you'll notice like some pictures at the same spot, you even change your settings, look so much different. A lot of times it's because of reflections. So whenever you're out shooting or even in your house, the room with the, not only the most light, but the most white is the best for photos. So if you notice, especially if I've done like your baby pictures or whatever, I'll take the baby to your window light, but also kind of be near the white walls because it's all reflective. So when that mirror inside your camera, when it flips in there, this thing right in here, which is cool because now they've gone to wireless, or I'm sorry, mirrorless, and I cannot wait. They're super expensive. They're like $6,000 just for like the camera body. But so when this mirror flips, it's taking everything in front of it, the light and everything, and bringing it, literally flipping the mirror around and bringing it back into your camera. So if you notice a lot of times when you're shooting outside, you'll notice this now that I told you especially, I'll say to my husband, what do you notice about this picture? And he'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, doesn't it look green to you? He's like, no. But for me, because I'm just constantly looking at it, if you notice that your pictures are too green when you're outside and you're in front of green, or maybe sometimes your skin tones look really pink in pictures. Again, if you're shooting in auto, for the most part, it's going to be correct. I'm trying to, okay, camera's locked up right now. Oh, there you go. If you go to, come on. If you go, you should have a WB button. And when you press it, it goes to a button like this. Do your cameras have that? It's like a grid that does. Ooh. Mine, to find it, is I have like that little Q that you press it, and then it pops up in the middle, and there's like a little WB. It's like a white balance. Does everyone see that? Okay, so when you click on that, if you notice, if you change that, if you use your dial to change it, you see how it goes like closer to the greens and the pinks. If you happen to be out and about, and this is just a fun thing to kind of play around with, especially now that it's getting to be outside season for pictures, if you notice that your pictures are really green, if you take and toggle down, so the green is on top, right? So if you toggle that down, that's gonna add more magenta. So it's the opposite of green. So it will even out the coloring of your pictures. See how you can like change that when you toggle? It kind of moves that little thing up and down. Can you see that? Again, this is just if you notice something in your pictures are, or if you notice like they have like a blue hue to them for any reason. Say you're in a room that's got like a blue, like I photograph people's houses. Sometimes their actual walls in their houses are like a blue tint to them. So when I take the picture, my picture has more blue than when you would normally have. So like when I go to take their picture, I'll go into that, I notice it on my screen. I'll just kind of add a little bit more red, because then when I take my picture, it will counteract with the blue walls. So if you notice a room in your house that you regularly take pictures in, just kind of the coloring looks funky, a lot of times it's because you have to add, it's reflecting. When your mirror is flipping, it's reflecting that color onto your images, which is, like I said, super huge for me in the summer. In the spring when I'm outside and you have a lot of green around you, your camera will pick up that green. So I'll just go in and kind of just add a little bit of pink. You don't want to add too much because then you'll start, actually looking pink. So people will look pink. But you'll notice that when you take a picture and just kind of play with it, even tomorrow or whatever, when you're outside, that the more that you move that around, especially when the green, and you add more of the magenta, it will actually even out your skin tones and take any of the green or any of the coloring. You can do all that in Photoshop, But for me, after editing, in the summer I'll edit 50 sessions a week. I don't want to go through and take green off of everyone's faces. So I try, when I start a session, really see how the green is affecting the pictures, and I'll go in and just kind of adjust that. So when I upload them, I don't have to go in and change the green on every single picture. The other one for orange, if you're doing the school gym and you notice they're orangey, which is, like I said, my biggest thing, is if you add a little bit of blue, kind of go a little bit by the blue and the green, it will also even out your orange. So it's kind of a little bit more detail of the white balance. It's giving you a little bit more options for a specific color. It's not so much the temperature of the lighting. This is more of like the color. Like I said, this happens a lot when you're inside and you're reflecting off different walls, or when you're outside with green. So just always remember, because I've made the mistake of not going back and bringing it back to the middle, and then I start a new session and the lighting and coloring is completely different, and then I have like my first 10 pictures, I'm like, oh, everyone's pink, that's great. So just kind of remember to set that back. But the more that you take pictures, the more that you'll start to notice those things. Like I noticed it when you first start taking pictures, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, Melissa, I love this picture. But I've been in business now for 7 years. So 7 years later, I'll look at my pictures and be like, oh my gosh, the coloring on that is awful. But back then, I wouldn't have known that. So the more that you take pictures and the more that you look at them and compare them to like real skin, the more that you'll be able to just look at the back of your screen and go, oh gosh, I need to adjust this. Oh my gosh, I need to adjust that. But it might just take you some time. Like truthfully, after 7 years of business, I still am learning things, like whether it's Photoshop or I follow some photographers I'll take like one-on-one online mentorships with, just because you can't not know everything. That's just how you learn, is by keep practicing and practicing. A lot of people who have taken my class though will take the class and then like try this in 6 months from now. It's not going to work. It's like anything else. Tomorrow, today, whatever, tomorrow, start taking some pictures of your kids, whether it's outside, whether it's inside, and be like, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Take notes. And then I figured, like, if not tomorrow, however long people think, I was gonna do tomorrow morning, but I figured you guys aren't gonna be able to really get out and use your cameras by tomorrow morning. So maybe in a couple days, I thought we could come back, instead of throwing like the next step at you, because I'm assuming this is a little bit overwhelming, to like learn some of this stuff. So go outside, go inside, use your settings, practice ISO, really look at that. The PDF I'm going to send you tonight literally has everything I've said with samples of pictures, showing you the light and the dark and how it all works. I want you to practice it. I want you to go outside, take pictures, go inside, take pictures, take notes, come back and say, Melissa, I don't understand this part of the triangle. What can I do? That's the only way you're really going to learn, is to actually go out and do it. And I kind of figured if we did it in a little bit of steps, I'm assuming for you, Samantha, a lot of this is, you already know this, but I figured it was a good start to get us out. There's no point in going really deep into the settings without knowing the real basics, and then we're going to kind of go from there. And if there's ever a question that you have that's like beyond what I'm asking, feel free to email me or whatever. I'm not one of those photographers who's worried about you guys all becoming photographers. That would be awesome. I would actually love a partner. So if anybody really gets to that point. But to know that you guys are all out taking pictures that are good, better quality. I think right now we lean so much on our cell phones because we think, oh my gosh, my cell phone takes such great pictures. Well, they always look great on your phone, but if you ever taken one of your pictures and actually tried to print it, they don't usually look very good. And a lot of times we never print them. We never do anything with them. So to learn the camera that you've already invested money in just makes sense. And, especially seeing kids, obviously Joseph's younger than us, I'm an old lady compared to him, but to see kids of that age, I think people get so caught up in their cell phone that they don't realize like how much better of pictures they can have. And just learning these simple settings will literally change your pictures, thank you, overnight. So I'll answer any questions you guys have now, but what would be a good day? How long you guys think it would take you to kind of practice this stuff, come back with any questions you might have? And I don't want you to feel like you have to like run tomorrow if you have things you have to do, but I kind of want you to give you guys the opportunity to really use it, because that's what kind of makes sense. And then come back and kind of go to the next step and dig deeper into the settings and kind of what you need to do to better the pictures you want to take. So is there like any suggestions on when you guys think we should do it? Like, is the weekend too soon? Monday? I mean, I literally have no life right now. So I don't know how many of you are still working or not, but you know, nighttime's a little bit easier for me because I don't have to worry about homeschooling Jersey. She hates every second of it. So I'm sure she's absolutely loving that I'm completely ignoring her, but if I don't stay on top of her during the day, we'll be like doing homework at 10 o'clock at night. So I know, Jessica, you teach during the day. So what's kind of best for everyone to kind of go out, use your cameras, and kind of come back? What do you think?
Maybe like Monday
Okay.
night, give us the weekend.
Yeah, Monday. Is this a good time for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is starting tomorrow is I did it one time, but I feel like a lot of people, I think, really didn't know what they were doing yet. I want to put up a challenge. I want to put up a challenge that you guys take the picture every day. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, like in a photography group and like the other day was reflection. And some of the people were like literally a reflection of themselves in a mirror, but other people use like the reflection of water and trees. Like reflection, it's whatever the word means to you. There's no right or wrong. And if you don't want to post it in the group, you could always just message it to me. That's fine too. But I want to give you things to challenge yourself, because like me, if I don't have a reason sometimes to take pictures, I just don't. I mean, especially now that I don't have babies anymore to take pictures of, or like my kids are kind of older and kind of over me in my pictures. It's a little bit harder for me to really get into like using my camera all the time, which I've been really trying. So I'm going to starting tomorrow, I'm going to give a daily challenge. Nothing to go crazy over, just take a picture. It's really just a reason to get you to use your camera, using the settings we talked about, kind of see your kind of where you are with photography. But like I said, if you don't feel comfortable posting it, feel free to private message me. And then we'll come back Monday, probably. I would say if 7 works for you guys, that works for me, or is later, earlier, does that matter to anybody? I do think though, even though you can watch this later, I do think being on it live is helpful, because if you do have questions, you're right there and you can ask them versus just watching it like a video. For me, that's how I've learned better being on one-on-one or being in a live class than I have on videos. Just how I learn. Maybe you guys learn differently. It will be there for you guys to use. Don't feel like you can't, because it's going to be there forever. But so for now, I want you guys to practice these settings. I'm going to give you a daily challenge starting tomorrow. If you can kind of just let me know, even if you just give it a like or just okay. It's hard to know if everyone's getting everything. I feel like today, almost everybody said that they could be on tonight, but there's only 8 of the 15 people. So I just want to make sure I'm really getting the information out. And this seems to work. Facebook seems to work. But if you go into your notifications of the group, I'm really the only person who posts in it for the most part. So even if you change your notifications to get the notification, if you know how to do that, I can show you when we're done with this. But it will, like, every time I post, you'll get a notification on your phone. There's not very many of us, so you maybe get 1 or 2 notifications a day. It'll be nothing crazy, but that might help to keep everyone more on the same page. But I have no set amount of times to sit down and talk with you guys. So if it takes 5 times to really get to know the settings, okay, like there's no rule against it or anything, but I don't really want to go any further until I know that you understand this part of it, and kind of go from there. So right now I just kind of want to play around with it. I'll send you the PDF when we hang up, and then we'll plan to get back on Monday at 7. If you can't for some reason, you'll have the video available to you. But does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I literally hate being like this. So, but I'm really glad that it's my little bit of sanity away from all of this craziness in my house. So thanks so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me or anything.
Thanks, Melissa.
Awesome. Bye guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.